Hi, everybody. Good morning. Bright and early. Thanks for coming. We're going to talk today about cloud optimization. Hope you're all excited about it. I know we are. So we also have an awesome guest speaker here today, Noel from Fidelity. And Noel's going to talk about Fidelity's FinOps journey as well. So we're going to talk about some of the AWS products and capabilities on optimization, as well as a success story of how they can be put to use for awesome success in your AWS environment. So we're going to start by talking about the visibility journey, kind of as you go through and understand cloud costs and learn to manage them, and then at the end, how we get to optimization. We're going to talk about the methods that organizations can use and apply to their AWS environment to optimize. Then we're going to have Noel talk about the Fidelity journey. And then we're going to talk about specific updates to the AWS Compute Optimizer product. So we're really excited to bring some new information, and we just had some launches earlier this week we're excited to talk about. So to start with the visibility journey, I hope everybody can see that the first step of the visibility journey is chaos, and I hope you all recognize that it can be really difficult when you start on your cloud journey to understand what outcomes you're looking for, what sort of goals you have in mind for your cloud deployments, and what services to use, what technologies to implement, and how to line up your business results that you want by using cloud technology. And it sort of slowly matures into awareness as you get subject matter experts in your organization, you define your strategies and goals, and you work towards building cloud technology that serves your business needs. And then this third one is probably one of the most popular places to pause because safeguards are difficult, whether that's doing compliance, whether that's doing security, whether that's figuring out how to manage and control and use different services correctly. These safeguards can be oftentimes a big inflection point in your cloud journey. And they're a really necessary step to make sure the whole organization is on the same page. And once we go through the safeguards part of the journey, we get to governance. And that's where we're doing things like implementing tag methods. We're implementing maybe organizations or account mapping exercises, and really trying to understand and map out what are our accounts and the resources we have to what business value they're trying to deliver. And then optimization. The reason why optimization is kind of last in the visibility journey is because it's really difficult to optimize your cloud environment when you have low maybe tag quality or understanding of who owns what resources or what they're doing, if they're production or non-production. So a lot of times optimization is sort of locked behind a really big gate that makes it very difficult to run an optimal cloud environment. Now, there are ways to bring optimization forward in your journey, and we're going to talk about some of those optimization methods today as well. So when we think about cloud optimization, we think about 4 major methods to optimize your cloud environment. We think about discounts, and this is reservations, savings plans, EDPs. These are sorts of methods to reduce your bottom line bill. And this is important, of course, because we can use reservations and savings plans and other methods safely in your environment to help have more consistent month-over-month costs. That's one of the biggest areas that we like to help, is helping customers have a more consistent and reliable billing experience. The next is deleting. Hopefully everybody's familiar with this one. This is removing your unattached EBS volumes. This is cleaning up your unused static IP addresses, right? These are the resources that are left in your AWS accounts that may or may not be providing any value at that time. And then my personal favorite, right-sizing, which we'll talk about later with Compute Optimizer. This is also something you can think about as scaling, whether that's using something like auto-scaling groups or containers environments to get more scale out of your resources. But this concept that the cloud is really dynamic, and we want to take advantage of that elasticity of the cloud. And that's really difficult to do if we take with us some of the on-prem mentality of fixed instance sizes. And that leaves a lot of value on the table because the cloud offers us this opportunity to size our workloads and size them again and again and again. And so we want to take advantage of that elasticity so we get more value for the CPUs we do have provisioned in our environment. And then suspending. Suspending can be a very, very great way to save costs in your cloud environment. And what that means is turning off your stateful workloads nights and weekends when they're not in use. Something like having an automated light system where you leave the room and the lights turn off. We don't need to run all of these workloads 5 nines, 24/7. And we have to do a lot of culture shift to really change our understanding of how uptime equates to cost. And of course, this is kind of a non-production conversation. Typically, we can still find a lot of applications out there that have a ton of non-production environments. You know, I've seen this in my career previously where you have dev, test, integration test, perf test, right? And you have all of these environments, right? And so you run into this situation where at any given time, a lot of these environments are sitting idle. And there's a huge opportunity there. We don't need to have fixed provisioning 5 nines mentality in our cloud environments. Of course, having those mentalities and great BCDR and backup for production is really important, and resiliency is a critical component. But for non-production workloads, there's a lot of opportunity for us here. And so really taking these concepts and being aggressive with them can provide a lot of fruit. Okay, so we're gonna do something kind of fun here today. We're gonna do a little bit of a poll. So if everybody could take out their cell phones, there's 2 ways to do this poll. You can scan the QR code, or you can go to the AWS Events app and click on the More button on the bottom right, and click on Polling and type in this 6-digit number. The question we have for you today, people are snapping pics, I don't want to advance the slide. So the question we have for you today is, which of the following optimization methods that we just discussed has your organization used, if any? So we're gonna take a look at the results here in about 30 seconds or so. Go ahead and type in your answer. We're gonna take a look at which of these methods your organization is implementing, and we're gonna kind of see what are the most popular methods. I have a hunch what it is, but I'm interested to see the results to validate. Also, these QR codes and everything work for everybody that's watching remotely. So if you're watching in our overflow session or any of the other locations around campus, this will work for you as well. So please help us out and participate. We'd love to see the results with lots of answers. Alrighty, do we want to flip over to results? All right, so discounts is number 1. That's exactly what I thought. Okay, so one of the interesting things here we see is that customers typically will go for discounts first because it does not require your engineering teams to engage. So it's much easier because you don't have to have deep conversations about architecture. You don't have to have conversations about sizing instances down, which can lead to performance conversations, right? So we see discounts leading. I like that deleting is up there, and I think we have an opportunity for right sizing. So this is great. Awesome. Thanks, crew. So let's talk about these 4 methods in a little bit more detail and the business value they can provide you. I'm simulating kind of a AWS bill here, and we're looking at our total cost, and let's look at how much discounts can save across your bill. Discounts can save up to 72%, but when you look across your entire AWS bill, we see something, let's use a more conservative number, like 30%, just to be on the safe side. And that's using reservations and savings plans and other discount methods. We take right sizing and auto-scaling group and scaling in general, and we use our infrastructure to be more flexible and elastic. And that's an additional up to 20% or more savings. And then we have our suspending capability. And the reason why you're seeing us stack these is because there's nothing stopping us from using all of these methods together at the same time. And this is a really important part of cloud optimization in general, because when you use multiple methods of optimizing your cloud environment, the savings can grow pretty substantially. And the last one is deleting unused resources, right? This is unattached EBS volumes, static IP addresses, other resources, maybe EBS snapshots, right? Which can kind of sometimes grow the number of snapshots in your environment, and cleaning that up is important. So all total, 65%, something that is potentially possible in your environment. You'll notice, like, I know it's kind of early in the morning. I didn't put 65% there to try to see if you were all awake. It doesn't add up. You'll notice the 30, 20, 25 is 75. That's because if you save certain amounts of money from suspending, the amount of savings you get from something like right sizing is a little bit lower because you multiply percentages of savings, right? So the total savings amount is a little bit lower, but what's really interesting is they compound. And that's the real trick of cloud optimization. If you take 100 right-sizing actions in month 1 and 100 right-sizing actions in month 2 and month 3 and so on, you'll notice your total amount of achieved savings will start to hockey stick. And anybody that likes watching their 401k during a nice run in the market will know that compounding interest is a really powerful tool that we can use in the cloud optimization industry, which is really exciting. So I would encourage everybody to take a look at all 4 methods of cloud optimization and see how they can apply to your environment. Now, I have some examples. So we're going to look at a server right now, a workload, an EC2 instance. We're going to look at an M5 4 extra large. And I picked one that actually has pretty good utilization. This has more utilization than we typically see. So we see up to 25% CPU utilization for this workload after, this is just a 1-day span. So if we right-size this workload using Compute Optimizer, we see that Compute Optimizer recommends an M5 extra large. So we can save $520 a month on this instance by sizing it correctly. Now, Compute Optimizer leaves actually quite a bit of headroom when it does right-sizing, because the whole goal of Compute Optimizer is to first protect the performance of the workloads, and then second, just do so without over-provisioning. And so we still have a good amount of headroom in this workload, even if we right-size. But what about the bottom part of this graph? What else can we do to optimize this workload? Well, if it's a non-production server, we can just turn it off. You notice that it's not being used, I think that's like 35, 40% of the time. So if we turn it off, we're only now paying for the part of the graph where there's actual work happening on the EC2 instance that we want it to be doing. So we apply these 2 different methods of cloud optimization to this workload, and now we're having a total spend of $88 a month for a workload that originally had cost us $660 a month. 86% total savings on this individual workload. Now imagine that sort of applying broadly, uniformly across your environment. But the next question you're going to ask is, what if it's a production workload, right? So before I get there, I want to talk about the suspension a little bit. We have some AWS-provided capabilities to suspend your workloads. Here's some links to some products and capabilities that are available that you can use today to turn off non-production workloads. We've got some really, really nice out-of-the-box tools that you can configure to do that. So we have AWS EC2 suspension. We have a stop-start product. We have Lambda and Event Bridge stop-start. And then we also have Instance Scheduler. OK, so the question is, what if this is a production workload? I'm not going to turn it off, right? This needs to be available, highly available, fully redundant. OK, let's go for another combination of optimization methods. Let's take the same server. We apply the same right-sizing algorithm because no matter if it's production or non-production, we still care about performance. So we still size it the same way, very conservatively, but a lot of savings available. And then instead of turning it off nights and weekends, we apply our savings plan to it. Say we apply a compute savings plan across this workload. Interestingly enough, it comes out to 86% total savings. So now we are providing a discount and achieving a discount on the bottom part of the graph for the whole 24-hour period of this workload. We come out with $88 a month for this workload. OK, so I want to dive into reservation and savings plan purchases a little bit here. We recommend kind of thinking about your usage in 2 major categories. One is your constant and stable usage, and one is kind of your more dynamic, volatile, maybe unexpected sorts of usage that comes via maybe application growth or new demand or things like that. So by applying reservations and savings plans to your predictable usage, we can acquire that up to 72% of additional savings on that really stable amount of usage and workload. That's really important. We can slowly grow that as the volatile usage becomes more stable over time, as you have maybe application growth or user growth or things like that for your applications. And the more we can move volatile to predictable, the more your costs stay more consistent. We strongly recommend doing incremental, smaller purchases. And this is important because you can reevaluate your savings plans and reservations monthly or quarterly. And this allows you to adjust your coverage levels much more flexibly. This is important to us because you can use something like a compute savings plan, which is more flexible to cover a broader range of workloads, and incrementally layer in maybe more precise, a little higher savings reservations here and there in smaller scopes and quantities. And then it helps you avoid any sort of a cliff situation where if you had one giant savings plan, it was a 3-year savings plan, at the end of that 3 years, when it disappears, it's kind of a mad scramble to repurchase, right? And having smaller, more incremental savings plans and reservations, especially if you use the recommendations that are available in the console, you can incrementally layer these on top of each other and convert your volatile usage into stable, steady usage and more consistent costs. Cool, so that was a lot of talking. I'm gonna invite Noel up here to talk about the Fidelity journey and story. And thank you so much for joining us and talking about this. I'm excited about this story.
Thanks, Rick. Thank you. So, my name is Noel Crowley. I work for Fidelity Investments. I'm based out of Galway in the west of Ireland. And why that's important is because at the end of this call, 5 o'clock somewhere, is Galway in the west of Ireland. So just before I start, just want to ask a question. Has anyone heard of Fidelity Investments here? Customers of Fidelity Investments using our products, services? Excellent. That's great. Thank you very much. Fidelity Investments was founded in 1946. Privately owned company by the Johnson family. Still own it today. In 2016, we put our first product into the cloud. First product out there. In 2019, we made a commitment or a statement that we would have 70% of our workload in the cloud by 2024, with 100% there by 2026. Today, we're at just over 5,700 applications out there, with more going every day. So when we started this journey, we put in place some guardrails around adopting the cloud safely and securely, ensuring that we didn't do any harm to the Fidelity brand as we migrated to the cloud, and that we'd adopt cloud in a cost-effective manner. With that in mind, we then set up our FinOps practice in Fidelity at that time. We, as a grouping, set ourselves a goal to ensure that we got the best value for every dollar that we spend in the cloud. What we wanted to do was make sure that we weren't the people who told developers to turn off stuff, stop spending money. What we wanted to do was to ensure that they were using all the flexibility that they could get, use innovation, everything else that the cloud was providing to us, but do it in the best way they could, get the most out of it for themselves. But we also wanted to ensure we were cost effective as best we could. So that's what we came up with our line, ensure we got the best value for every dollar we spent in the cloud. That FinOps practice will become important as we go through this, but one of the best things about that is it's a kind of a hub and spoke model in that we have a centralized practice team that is drawn from our major business units. We're a federated model, so we have many business units, but we have our major ones all involved in this practice. That allows us to make decisions in the center and then share that out and push that down. So it's not a push model, it's actually working, that we all work together and we get there. So as we established our practice, we created some focus areas for us to work on. And in Fidelity, we do like acronyms and stuff like that, so we call them our FinOps focus. And the very first one that we had here was looking at cost transparency. As we established our practice, as I was saying, late 2018, early 2019. So because we wanted to get there safely and securely, we already had some good tagging practices and policies in place. We had access to the AWS Cost Explorer, the DBR at the time, Detailed Billing Report. Of course, that as we matured and got bigger, we used Occur. And we also had a third-party tool that we used to help us to visualize costs. This allowed us to show teams as they migrated their applications to the cloud exactly how much they were spending within 24 hours of getting there. And this was a first to us for most of our development teams as we started to come out of data centers. So we felt early on in our practice and in our journey that we had ticked the box. We got cost transparency in place, job done, we were happy with that. So from there, we wanted to look at what was next here was our financial controls. Well, we're a financial services company. We're sometimes defined in my lifetime here, I kind of look at it and go, the whole time I've worked in Fidelity, I'm an IT company that does financial services as opposed to being a financial services company. But we had financial controls in place. We had buy-in from our financial organization that we could purchase reservations at the time on behalf of the firm. So we were able to do that for Fidelity. We had processes in there for forecasting, for budgeting, and all that. Part of that agreement and part of how that worked was we had finance in our FinOps practice. So again, we had them on the inside, we weren't keeping them on the outside and causing an area of issue. And that leads us then into our purchasing strategies. So kind of what Rick was talking about earlier, as people go to the cloud, what were they looking at first? What's the first trigger that they kind of all pull? And everyone looks at discounts. So for us, we created what we call our KPIs. I'm sure you all have your own versions of them. But we had three KPIs in our first year. I'm going to start with the middle one, if that's okay. And that's our percentage of RI coverage. So what we did initially was we just looked at the reservable services that were available, right? And we looked at what part of that service was reservable. So if you think it simply, just look at EC2, it's instance usage we were counting and the costs of that, the hours we were using instance usage. We didn't worry about storage, we didn't worry about data transfer, because you can't reserve those. So we looked at what we could impact. Put together a very simple sum. We took the number of hours that were reserved, we divided that by the total hours that were used by that service minus Spot if Spot was available for it. I'll talk more about Spot in a second. So that was what we did. Gave us a simple RI coverage rate. During our very first year, and very quickly, we started to realize we needed to evolve that a little bit. And we went from just using usage hours to ISF hours. And that was something, the ISF instance size flexibility, where a large is half the cost of an extra large, but double the cost of a medium. So, and they're all weighted slightly differently. But that's what we started looking at. How can we use that to help us? That helped us drive more and more towards our 80% goal of reservation coverage. And we needed to do that. And ISF hours is how we got there with that. Oh, sorry, wrong slide. Back we go. Spot coverage. We wanted to drive spot coverage across the fleet. Anywhere you're going, any talks you're going, anytime you listen to anyone talk about discounts, they're always going to talk about spot. The more spot you get, the better your discounts, right? AWS tell you up to 90% of your you get up to 90% discount for using spot. It's a discount. We wanted to get coverage of that, get that usage as much as we could across the fleet in Fidelity. So taking those two metrics and our KPIs together, that created our top one, our unit discount. So we take the discount we were getting for RI coverage, take the discount we were getting for spot, adding them together, take that away from our list price, that was giving us our unit discount. We set ourselves a target for that as well. And we set ourselves a target for that, which we estimated we should be able to get to by just hitting our RI coverage plan and our spot coverage plan, right? Now, we took those three KPIs, created an index metric off them, with the unit discount being 50%, weighted at 50%, the RI coverage at 40%, and spot coverage at 10%. Again, we just wanted to get the discounts where we could get them. That was what we did in year one. Purchasing strategies, year one, happy. So as we entered into year two, or 2021, we started to look at our optimization. So we know now we're getting discounts for what we want, but are we using what we're buying? Are we getting the best value for the dollars that we are spending? So let me just revert back to the 2020 and tell you how we actually did in that year. Well, the good news is we got our reservation coverages, we got our spot usage out there, which meant we got our unit discount. So yay, we got success in year one. Now I'm lucky. I work with a FinOps practice, but I also work for central IT. And my leadership team, my leader, basically, every time we succeed at anything, he drives back at us to kind of go, how did you do that? What did you learn from that? Which means we have to drive in and look at the lessons that we got out of hitting those two goals. Well, it might not surprise you, but two people looked after our RI coverage. 17,000 associates doing technology, 2 people manage our RIs. One business unit was the leader. Basically, they were the usage of Spot. They drove Spot across their business unit. So that kind of let us going, there's only 2 of us working or 3 of us working on this, really? There's a lot more we can be doing out there. So we wanted to evolve it a little bit. We changed it from being just an overall Fidelity KPI, and we started to look at it, spread it out towards the business units. So each business unit started getting their own scores. We went through and into year 3 and 2021, or sorry, year 2, 2021. Now, we also evolved the KPIs a little bit. As I said, we wanted to start looking towards optimization. We took our 3 KPIs from year 1. We merged them together to now create one pillar within our index metric. That's now called purchasing effectiveness. It's just one pillar there. It's one number to hit. But just to be aware, the 2 underlying metrics, they don't go away. They're still there. In order to hit that metric, you still have to be getting your reservations. You still have to be using Spot. You still have to be getting your overall discounts. Otherwise, you can't hit it. But then we introduced new ones. So we know we're doing discounts. So now we're looking at the deletion, suspensions, unutilized resources, we call that. So what we're doing is we're going out looking for resources. And again, at the very start of this, we looked at EBS volumes that were orphaned, RDS snapshots that were unused, that kind of stuff. And we were saying, have you automation in place to delete this stuff? Now, we wanted to know that you had the automation in place, not necessarily that it was actually necessarily deleting stuff, because if your automation has it deleted, then the next time it runs through, it might not delete anything. So if you have automation there, tell us, we'll measure it, we'll get that added in. That's what we wanted you to do. Have automation in place to do these things. So that was our second one. Again, we weighed that at 20% of the index for people to hit. Our underutilized assets. This is our right-sizing space, if you want to call it that. We were looking at how can we say to someone, hey, this is an instance that you've purchased. Now, are you using it enough? So when we sat down and we looked at it and we went, what kind of metrics are out there that are easy for people to see straight away? Every time you spin up your EC2 instance, you're getting CPU utilization straight away out of the box. So we used that metric. It was a metric, it was a trigger for us to hit. And we set that at 10% of our overall KPI for year 2. And that's what we were trying to get to, was trying to get then into people to look at it and drive it forward. So that's it. We're still at IT optimization as we exit year 2, okay? That was what we wanted to do, optimize our fleet. So I'll just go back and I'll start to talk through how we did for that. So our cost purchasing effectiveness KPI, we have our reservations in place, we have our Spot in there. So what did we learn there? We got that metric, we hit that one, no problems with that. But because we now started sharing that KPI per business unit, we saw that Spot was no longer being done by just one business unit. Other business units were now starting to adopt it, partly from seeing the success of it in one business unit and across the others, but then because they were measured to it as well. More of the FinOps practice we're helping and working together. We were doing our reservations together as a team and pushing them out, getting more and more input and getting them to working better. It's no longer just a centralized thing. Our underutilized resources. This was the automation we wanted to put in place. We started off doing that account by account, going, hey, we want to put this automation in place. It's going to delete this for you. It's going to delete that for you. And it was a slow and hard process. We went back and we used our FinOps practice to help us with that. What we did was we got buy-in from them, and they were able to push that down through their business units. And what we discovered was that there was more teams out there doing this stuff that we didn't know about, but we only found out about it because as we went out as a bigger practice, we got that information back into us as a center. So we were able to measure that and add that all up into our KPI. Now, our underutilized assets, this is what I'm saying about our CPU, was the more we talked to teams about this, the more we went into all of our associates and drove in at this, was teams are saying they're picking instances not because of the CPU, but maybe it's memory, maybe it's IOPS, maybe it's whatever. They have many reasons for picking them, it's regions, whatever. It's availability and stuff like that. So we started to listen to them and kind of find out more, what can we do to help them with that? And that brings us into our year 3, this year 2022, where we changed our metrics again, our KPI slightly. We kept our purchasing effectiveness up at the top. That's our first one. That's the only changes we make to that is we changing the weighting of them as we go through each year. We're now gone from it being 70% of our score to 50% of our score. We then made a really good hire to the firm. We hired a guy called Zach with a K. He's previously a lumberjack, and he absolutely loves cutting down costs. That's all he wants to do. So we deployed him out there to start turning off instances at the weekends. One of the upsides we found from him was, as we put him out there in accounts to do it on a Friday night, people started asking us to do it on Thursday night, Wednesday night, Tuesday night, Monday night, because it's easy. All it does is stop stuff for you. It doesn't delete anything. So that was buy-in from that. Again, we use our FinOps practice, and we got that deployed out across the firm. And our underutilized assets, or utilization. Here we made changes to that, and the feedback we were getting was predominantly people were saying, oh, it's CPU isn't why I'm using that instance. I'm using it because I need the memory or whatever. So we said, okay, well, how can we do that? We'll turn on the advanced agent, collect the memory metrics, combine them together. We won't change our CPU because we're still asking you to get to a CPU level. But we'll now say, if you're using it for memory, then use memory at a certain level as well. We want to see that up at a certain level as well. So if either one of those is at the right level, then we're going to tick that box and say you've hit it. Right? So that was our year 3 this year's KPIs as we go through it. Now, as we get into this year and going forward with this, where are we going to go next? What are we going to be doing as we move this forward? Well, it's perhaps the biggest one, the most important one for us within Fidelity, and it's the culture of accountability. Okay? So we've looked at what Rick was saying earlier on around discounts, right sizing, suspend, delete. We've done that. We have those in place. We have automation for those, and we're trying to continuously drive the message out there for people to do it. But part of how we do that is this culture of accountability. I'm just going to show you this slide here, which kind of gives us a look back over the last few years of our KPIs and trying to give a fuller picture of it. We started off, we used discounts. Straight out, discounts was what we measured ourselves on. As we moved that forward a bit, we brought in underutilized resources. We brought in unutilized resources and underutilized assets. Just an introduction for people to start using them and start looking at them. Start being aware of them. Then as we move into this year, we've gone from it being a 70%, 30% down to a 50-50 on that space. As we go forward towards 2026 and we increase the fleet and spend and everything else that's out there, we want to see these as 3 equal pillars, right? With responsibility for everybody in each of their spaces. Overall, we know what we need to do is drive our FinOps culture. That's how we're going to do it. That's how we're going to optimize our fleet. That's what we're going to see towards the future and for the betterment of our customers. In closing and in finishing, Fidelity's KPIs, FinOps KPIs, have always been to achieve the best discount for Fidelity's cost usage. First one, reduce our waste and optimize our usage for underutilized resources. If you think back at the very start, I mentioned we adopt the cloud in a cost-effective manner. This is how we're hoping to do it. Thanks very much.
That's such a cool story. I love the part about accountability because I've seen that when talking to a lot of customers and companies. The harder change when we take optimization seriously isn't in deploying certain products or capabilities. It's in every business unit and every organization realizing that cost is a resource, just like CPUs and memory, and having a more accountable relationship between those two things for each application owner, engineering team, and so on. So that culture change from fixed provisioning, data center, fixed cost, to flexible and elastic cost and resourcing can take time. But achieving those cultural changes is so valuable. Thanks, Noel. It's just such a cool story of this growth of accountability and engaging and flexibility and elasticity. It's cool. So we're going to talk about, we're going to come down in level altitude here a little bit, talk about Compute Optimizer. So Compute Optimizer is a product we launched in fall of 2019. Compute Optimizer covers 80% of EC2 spend globally. We have vended, I think, over 8 billion recommendations since the launch of this product in 2019. What this product does is it matches the resource types and sizes your workloads at the lowest price. So what it's looking at is all of the utilization metrics for your EC2 instances, and actually supports Lambda, EBS, and autoscaling groups as well. And looking at that utilization data over time, it's looking across all of the available instance types in the region that you're in, this workload is in, and it's looking at what is the best instance size for each workload, because there's a lot of choices, right? So how many people have seen the drop-down list when you're trying to build a new EC2 instance? How many people have seen how many times you have to scroll to get to that list, right? Yeah, so it's difficult, right? We provide a lot of choice, memory optimized instances, CPU optimized, storage optimized, right? There's a lot of capability out there to serve your specific application's needs really effectively. So with a lot of choice comes a lot of complexity. So Compute Optimizer is here to help solve that problem. Now, as we build and continue to iterate on Compute Optimizer, our golden rule is performance first. This is really important to us because we care deeply that these applications are performing well and serving your end customers and your business needs. So Compute Optimizer is focused on making sure all of your workloads are performing really well at the lowest possible cost. So there's this relationship between performance and cost that occurs. And it's actually kind of the same equation and same work that needs to be done, because sizing is a performance activity that happens to save cost. So if we look at the console dashboard for Compute Optimizer, you'll see the different recommendation types: EC2 instances, autoscaling groups, Lambda functions, EBS volumes. By the way, the EBS volumes right size recommendations are really awesome because you can take those with no downtime. So just kind of a side note and a trick, if you're working with your engineering teams and application owners to do right sizing, working on the EBS right sizing problem first is a great way to kind of get started on right sizing, because you don't have to look at maintenance windows or downtime windows for taking these right sizing actions. And there's lots of great actions in there, recommendations in there to move from GP2 to GP3, for example, which is a flat 20% reduction in cost per gigabyte. That's a great way to just sort of warm your teams up to what it means to right size and get some value out of changing and using resources more elastically. So we launched a new feature this week. I hope you all saw it in your news feed. Compute Optimizer launched a new capability to get memory metrics from external sources. And we're really, really proud to launch this with 4 of our partners. So we're launching it with Datadog, Dynatrace, Instana, and New Relic. And the reason why this is so important to us is because when you're doing right sizing and you're taking a look at Compute Optimizer, you're going to, by default, see recommendations that only size for CPU I/O and throughput. Now, that's valuable, but without being able to see that memory data, Compute Optimizer will not recommend downsizing the amount of memory you have on those instances. Again, going back to one of our core tenets in the Compute Optimizer team, we don't want to hurt performance. So if we don't have visibility into those memory metrics, we won't downsize you on memory. This is so your engineering teams can trust those recommendations and take them even if you don't have memory metrics. What this also means is that when we do have memory metrics in Compute Optimizer, the number of instances that Compute Optimizer can evaluate to potentially choose to size to is much more broad. Now we have memory visibility, we can size memory along with CPU, and that opens up a significant additional number of instances and a lot more flexibility. So for example, if you have something like 32 gigs and we don't have memory metrics for you, Compute Optimizer will only be able to look at other instances with 32 gigs or more of memory as potential sizing. So this limits the total potential savings a fair amount. And so to unlock and provide this additional savings, we recognize that lots of companies have instrumented APM and observability tools that have these performance metrics. And so now we can ingest these performance metrics from these products, pull them into Compute Optimizer, and give you those recommendations that are much higher value and also expose more performance issues that you might have had on memory. So this allows you to detect more performance issues in your environment and unlocks quite a bit more savings in your right sizing. So let's take a look at how easy it is to turn on the feature. This is one of the areas we're most excited about. We spent a lot of time working with our partners to build this in a very simple way where you just go into Compute Optimizer Preferences, you go to External Metrics Ingestion, and you just click the icon of the product you have and hit OK or Confirm. And that's it. That's the entire process for turning this feature on. So 30 hours go by as we collect 30 hours of historical data to build the recommendations, and you'll start seeing recommendations in your environment that have memory utilization data. Also note, if you don't have Compute Optimizer enabled and turned on, it's a free product and capability, so go turn it on and take a look at those recommendations. And if you have an observability platform or CloudWatch, definitely go take a look, because there's a lot of savings to be had by right-sizing your workloads. So once you do have the memory metrics loading in, this is a look at the individual recommendations you'll see in the Compute Optimizer console. You'll see that there's a new column we have that will show the name of the external metrics provider, and then you'll also see that right next to the savings opportunity percentage. So this is important because those percentages grow quite a bit when we have memory metrics. So we also launched a few other improvements over the year. We launched support for 37 new instance types earlier this year, 27 new bare metal, as well as the HPC 6A and C7G instance types. So Compute Optimizer now supports 425 different instance types to evaluate for right-sizing. And we're always looking to add additional new instance families as they come available to right-size too. This is also very important because as new instance families come out, we can take advantage of the large improvements in CPU performance. We can take advantage of new networking capabilities and thresholds on IOPS and throughput and these sorts of things too. And one of the best ways to optimize your EC2 instances is just by modernizing, because you can actually lower your CPU counts pretty dramatically if you're moving to new CPU models that are significantly more performant per core. So we can get more performance for our applications and reduce the core count at the same time. So that modernization practice is really important. We can also get more value out of things like Graviton instances, if we're using Graviton 2 or 3 and these sorts of things, because they have significant reduction in emissions and CO2 output, higher performance per core, and the core counts can go much higher at a lower cost. So this modernization approach is also important. You'll also notice, actually, I'm going to go back. You can see, when you see right-sizing, you can see the finding information on what about this instance needs to be right-sized. It'll also tell you the difficulty level of changing the instance size. Now, to change an instance size, it's just a quick reboot. It's a few minutes, and then it comes back online. So you'll want to schedule that in maintenance windows or downtime windows. But it'll also tell you if it's recommending a move to something like a Graviton workload. So that can be a really effective way to optimize. But it'll also give you recommendations if you don't want to make the jump to Graviton. So you can have that choice if you're ready to take a look at if Graviton makes sense for you, or if maybe that's a conversation for later, and you would like to optimize kind of on the current architecture, whether that's x86, Intel, or what have you. So you have a lot of options to optimize your estate that way. So lastly, I want to talk a little bit about how it fits into the cloud operations ecosystem. If you've been to some of the other sessions on cloud operations, you know that the entire initiative and goal is to help organizations really operate their cloud environment effectively, getting high ROI, making sure stack productivity is very high, and increasing business agility. And then I touched on carbon savings a little bit earlier. How many of you have used the carbon calculator emissions tool? A couple of you. So this is an awesome area as well, because when we can optimize our EC2 fleets, we can have a fairly significant impact on our carbon emissions as well. So this is an area, if your organization has goals around emissions, it's a fantastic way to tie that into your optimization initiative, kind of get two birds with one stone there. So that's really valuable. And then lastly, we're ending a little early here, but we have a few other reInvent sessions on cloud financial management. So definitely check those out. I think a couple of those have already occurred already, but you can check out the recordings as well. And lastly, thank you.